Right, I think this is going to be fairly short. It's going to be about greed and respect. I'm felling this for the firewood. It's for my own use, and a little bit gets sold to people that I know, who know me and know about me. Gets sold at slightly less than commercial rates, and the quality is the absolute highest. And I don't sell very much. And with that in mind, what I like to do is to maximise the amount of firewood I get out of the area that I cut each year. And I do that by snedding it tight, snedding off the bends, using every bit that I can, including fairly small bits. This bit here, for instance. That's a little bit small, but anything above that I tend to use as long as it's in a relatively straight length. And straight lengths, this counts as straight. Makes it easy to transport and then easy to process, because I'm all about easiness. Don't like to work too hard. This bit here, for instance, there's a big fork there. Cut the fork off, and that is just about straight enough. So is that greedy to maximise the amount of usable timber that I get out of this, or is it respect for the woodland, respect for the time that it's spent growing? Because the byproduct of what I do here is the nature conservation, getting the stools to grow back. We'll talk about this stool a little bit more later. And I do all the work by hand because I don't like to leave a mess when I finish. It looks like a mess now, but that'll all be cleared up. All that will go back on the log piles, the cords. But you could come in here with a harvester, conceivably. It would be very difficult to do, but it would make a huge mess. You could come in here with machines, teams of cutters, but it would be difficult to take this stuff, which is all higgledy-piggledy tangled, and turn it into firewood. Because a lot of what I use isn't premium firewood. This bit, for instance, it's bent and it's small. This bit is good. You could knock that into 4 on a firewood processor. It's nice and straight. So if you were knocking it into 2.4 metre lengths, which is about the minimum, you might get a length out of that to about where those bits come off the top. But beyond that, it's a bit small. You could get another 2.4 metre length, and some people wouldn't bother splitting it. But when the market usually asks for split logs, that's where the premium is, and you could split those once conceivably, but it's on the lower minimum. If you came in mechanised, what percentage of this timber would you be able to use for firewood? Probably less than 50%. And because you come in with machines, at the back end of the winter potentially, where the ground is at its wettest, you leave a mess. And all these huge stools, get the land around them would be compacted by the mass of the machine, unless you come in with a tracked machine with someone who knows how to use it, driving it, and you'd potentially risk running over these stools. And because you're taking out so little, you'd end up with a lot more material than I'm using in my dead hedges, probably scattered or left in just random piles about the place. So there's a lot of questions in there. How do you manage a woodland? How should woodland management be supported? I believe that on a wood this size, which is probably about 30, 40, 50 acres maybe, the areas cut each year should be relatively small and scattered over the wood, which is actually what happens. I'm not the only one cutting in here. That should give you a structural diversity, and the work that you carry out is on the scale which is compatible with the scale of the woodland. If you wanted to come in here and cut this 50-year-old material, and all this over here, beyond that biggest oak over there, that was all 50-year-old material. If you wanted to come in and do that on a commercial basis with machinery and a couple of fellas, that would mean that a huge area, or a much larger area, and I would argue an area incompatible with the total size of the woodland, would end up having to be felled to make it commercially viable. And you then come into the argument that commercial viability to this, for this, even on that sort of scale, would be marginal. Which is basically why I've got this gig. I don't pay any money to fell here. I get the firewood. The farmer gets dead hedges done and he gets the regrowth. So 7 years down the line, if the deer can be kept out, he might have something that he can sell as a standing crop, even though this is 50 years derelict. And over there, as you've seen on some of my other videos, it's looking pretty good so far.